Out of the way. Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the ACEC Research Institute's Future of Engineering Roundtable series in today's session, Recruiting Workforce and Leaders of the Future. Before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping announcements. For the easiest view, move your mouse to the top of your screen and select Gallery View. This will allow you to see all panelists. Your microphone was muted upon entry, but if you wish to ask a question or offer a comment, please feel free to type it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to answer as many questions as time permits. This event is open to the media, and the press is invited to participate as well with our other attendees by asking a question through the Q&A box. We are also recording today's event for future viewing. If you require any technical assistance, please feel free to send a message to ACEC Research Institute privately through the Q&A box, and I will be happy to assist you. Now, allow me to introduce the Executive Director of the ACEC Research Institute, Daphne Bryant, who would like to say a few words.
Thanks, Carrie, and welcome everyone to the Future of Engineering Roundtable. This is a three-part series on navigating generational dynamics and addressing your firm's workforce of the future. And just to give you a little bit of history of how we got here, last year, the Institute launched really the first of its kind benchmarking and maturity model for the engineering industry focused on DEI. And from that tool, we were able to pull out a lot of great aggregated data, interesting data about our industry and the progress that we're making in the maturity of our DEI efforts across the industry. Last fall, we released the first report from the Diversity Roadmap. And in that report, we found that 42% of our industry's workforce are millennials and another 17% are Gen Z. And so that's accounting for about 2/3 of our firm's workforce. And we thought, as we looked at that, it would be interesting and beneficial, we hope, to really dive into a series on how best to recruit, retain, and develop these future firm leaders. We wanted to understand what are their unique perspectives that are shaping how they're thinking about their long-term investment and commitment to our industry and to your firms. And so over the next several weeks, we're going to talk to firm leaders, generational experts, human resource executives, some millennials and Gen Zers themselves to understand what's attracting them, what's motivating them, and what's going to drive their long-term investment and commitment to our industry and to your firms. So as Carrie said, today is part one of the series, Recruiting the Workforce and Leaders of the Future. We're going to explore how do we attract the best and brightest candidates to join our industry and specifically to join your firms. So we have today moderating Kevin McMahon, who is a senior research consultant with the ACEC Research Institute, and he has pulled together this great panel. I'm going to let him introduce them and get us started. Kevin, over to you.
Thanks very much, Daphne. As Daphne mentioned, we have a terrific panel that spans the gamut of the industry. First, I'd like to introduce Bob Kelleher, who's president of the Employee Engagement Group, which is a leading HR consulting firm in the industry. And previously, Bob was the HR leader at AECOM. So he's knee-deep in the industry with lots of knowledge and experience. Next, we have Aimee Stidsen, who is the Talent Acquisition Director for People and Culture at VHB, which is a leading engineering firm that has become a national firm in our space. And last but not least, an actual Generation Z person herself, Elle Whitney, who is a staff engineer in the Geotech service group at Terracon. And this is a terrific group, and we had a little session before. So I'm really looking forward to hearing their insights into this perplexing question. We'll start off with a little bit of a contextual question, and we'll start with Bob. Bob, from your perspective, what are the generational trends influencing how younger engineers and professionals choose their careers today? Do they differ from previous generations?
Yeah, I get asked that question quite often, Kevin, and I've come to realize over time that a lot of the differences are really based on point in time, meaning, old people like you and I at age 24, we were probably somewhat similar to, today's 24-year-old or the Gen Z population. And when the millennials were 22, 23, starting out, they probably kind of looked like us, as did Gen Z or Gen X at the same time. So, I think we often make a lot about, people are very different at different generations. And I really do think it's worth mentioning, the point in time. There are some unique differences, though. If you look at both the millennials and Gen Z, a couple of things that they seem to have that's somewhat unique compared to some of the older generations in front of them. They're more global in how they view the world than perhaps I was when I was in school. I often joke that our international project when I was in college was going to Boston's Freedom Trail. And it's something like 50% of all college graduates study abroad today. So they just have a more global perspective. I like to think I'm technologically savvy. I'm not technologically dependent. And I think some of the younger professionals kind of grew up with technology. They grew up at hundreds of television stations and the world at their fingertips, with smart devices. So, they tend to be very much adapt at all things technology, and in some ways, perhaps more dependent than some of the older folks. The other thing that I think is important to keep in mind, and I'm envious. So Ellie, don't get mad at me when I say this. They tend to delay adulthood. When I think back to the greatest years of my life, it was before I had kids, and my wife and I, were both working. We were young professionals. And people get older and have children later today than they did, Kevin, back when you and I were starting our careers. And I think what that has done is it's created this false narrative that, the millennials didn't care about money, or Gen Z is not interested in money. And I think what we're seeing, especially, with the baby boomers now all having kids, they're very much interested in money and careers and wealth accumulation and savings. So, I think it's a combination of some unique differences and that point in time thing.
Great insights, Bob. Thank you. Aimee, the demographic shortage of qualified engineering students is well documented. How is that impacting your firm's hiring strategy today?
Yeah, so clearly Gen Z and STEM talent have so many options nowadays, and it's no doubt we have to continue to get in front of these students and talk about our industry. And it's not about showing up at career fairs, it's getting into the classrooms, it's speaking with different student organizations, and many companies you see are getting into high schools and middle schools. One of our employee resource groups is our college ambassadors. So these are scientists and engineers that enjoy talking with students and about what they do. We do have a robust undergrad, intern, and co-op hiring program. So as we grow, that program continues to grow. And we're really focusing on giving them an experience working with us for a summer or 6 months and hoping that they want to stay in this industry. We also hire high school students. Specifically, our Boston office for the last 4 years has hired, partnering with Boston Private Industry Council, working to place Boston public high school students in jobs with community-based companies. So it's programs like this that we hope to make the outreach with STEM students to introduce them. Whatever we can do to give them more information to consider in addition to those high-tech, showing them more options in industries, the better.
Great insights, Aimee. Elle, Bob's comments and Aimee's made me think back when I was your age, quote unquote. We were desperate to get a job. We were not wined and dined as a generation, and you, I don't know if you realize that you've been wined and dined a lot. But when you had all these options in front of you, what factors were most important to you in deciding which firms to apply to, and then ultimately you joined Terracon? What were the factors you were considering?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely did realize, getting out of college, that I had a lot of opportunities ahead of me, which I think is, a pretty lucky time to be at. But yeah, some main things. So for Terracon, I interned here during college, so I got to see, really what the company was about beforehand. I think something that was, you know, really big on my mind for just generally looking at companies. And then why I came to Terracon was, yeah, that opportunity to grow. Because I guess kind of what Bob was saying of, you know, people my age are taking a bit longer to settle down. And so, you know, like I don't mind going other places and, you know, trying different companies. And, you know, I'm not really set in one place yet. And so I think that opportunity for growth in a company, both, you know, within my role and then just knowing that there are opportunities to kind of work up the ladder was a really big thing for me. So, you know, interning as an intern, Terracon did a really great job at just like throwing me into a whole bunch of different projects and just trying to get the most out of that learning experience. So that definitely influenced me coming here after I graduated.
Awesome. Follow-up question, and this is from your perspective generically. I know culture and mission play a role in Gen Z's decision making. How would you advise companies to portray that? What did you look at? I know you were an intern, so you obviously experienced it, but short of that, what did you look at from different companies to try to evaluate what their mission and culture were like?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like a big thing with that is it's pretty easy for like a company to say, hey, we're really big on, you know, safety, we're really big on quality, you know, or whatever values, you know, a company says they're, you know, they're really centered in. I think a really big thing is seeing that actually going into action and that it's more than just some words for a company. So, you know, for Terracon, safety is a really big thing. And that kind of goes into everything that we do and was really apparent to me even before I started working here that, you know, it wasn't just a word to them, you know, they really put that into, you know, everything that they do within the company. So I think it's, you know, bridging that gap between, you know, just saying what your company values are and then actually taking that step to, you know, make that, you know, an integral part of your company and, you know, in everything that you do.
Okay, terrific. I'm going to put the word authenticity in for you, what you
Yes.
just described. Aimee, this is a little bit of advice for the whole industry out there. What specific, you know, strategy initiatives are you guys using to attract the best and brightest? You know, that sort of phrase that we use. But I think it's true because we are just a people business at the end of the day. And it's like a football team, the team with the best players is going to win. Ultimately, what would you recommend to the folks that listen to this webinar as strategies that work to attract and keep ultimately the best and brightest candidates?
Just to give you an example, so we recently looked at to what Ellie said, you know, show action versus words, and we recently really took a look at all of our recruitment marketing materials and how we're showing up as a company, and we designed it with this new Gen Z persona in mind. So we looked at the characteristics of Gen Z, and we drew the connections to our company, and doing things like we did away with giving out swag. And so we now do charity voting at when we do show up on campus anywhere. So, you know, staying through those recruitment marketing materials, we are staying authentic to who we are. We're showing them through visually what it's like to work here. The other thing we kept in mind is knowing that this generation needs snackable content. It is the digital, you know, folks. And so they grew up with the touch screens. And so we made sure that it's not too complicated with our communication, not a lot of words, because if you've ever texted with a Gen Z, you know what I mean. It's shortened. So we also thought more about being highly collaborative and social. So we wanted to make sure that we're talking about how they can belong, how they can contribute outside of the job that we're talking to them about, and speaking about our various resource groups that they can belong to. So those are some of the things that we intentionally drew out to try to attract people to our firm that show us more about what our values are and what our company culture is like.
Great. That's a new phrase that I've just learned, snackable content. I like that. Bob, you know, we heard about contributions, about authenticity from both Aimee and Elle. What are some misconceptions firms may have about recruiting younger generations, such as Gen Z or millennials, into technical fields like ours?
Yeah, you know, a few things. I think we tend to combine the millennials, the younger millennials, with Gen Z, and in fact, they're very different. By all accounts, the Gen Z population kind of looks more like baby boomers in terms of their wants and needs and desires. You know, they also kind of grew up during the 2008, 2009 Great Recession, and that kind of molds you. So I think one of the things that we tend to think about that's the misconception is people are going to change jobs like they change a channel on a TV, right? And we're seeing with the millennials now, based on the ages and the maturing of family status and so forth, they're showing a lot more stickiness with employers. And I think if companies do a good job on staff development with Gen Z, I think we'll have a better job of retaining Gen Z, maybe more so than we did when the millennials were a like age.
Okay. What can companies do to meet the expectations of these candidates? Are there anything that comes to mind for you, Bob, that, hey, if companies would just do a little bit more of this, it would be, wow, attractive to people like Elle?
Yeah, so as you know, Kevin, my firm, we do a lot of engagement surveys inside this industry, probably more than anybody. And every survey we do, when we look at what employees want, they want experiences, right? They don't want to be tied into doing phase one studies because they're really good at, they can keep the utilization up. They want career development. And I used to say, job rotation is a nice to have. If you're trying to recruit and retain young professionals, I believe job rotation is a must. Like, you have to be rotating them. And, it doesn't necessarily beneficial to the employer on day one, because, if you hire someone in 3 months, they're finally productive, and now you're going to rotate them to a different group. But from a retention standpoint, staff development standpoint, it's the way to go because it is such a significant engagement driver.
Great answer. And looking at people that we're hiring as long-term investments, I think really makes sense. Elle, when you were out looking at different firms to join, you gave us some great insights before. What differentiated some of the firms that you thought, wow, these might be a good one to join, including the Terracon, the one you joined? And what did you notice, and a few others you said, oh, I don't think I want to even bother looking at that? Give us a couple of ideas about what you saw.
Yeah, for sure. To kind of go off of what Bob was talking about, there were definitely some companies where it was evident that there was going to be a lot of opportunity to grow and to learn different things, and I think that was a really differentiating factor between companies, as the companies that were willing to take a hit on a little bit of productivity for a bit in order to grow their employees, and give them opportunities to learn new things, and constantly be encouraging questions and encouraging growth in their employees. And so that was a really big thing for me, as well as I think this is something that you get a little bit more of a gauge on, with more face-to-face contact. So, in interviews, it was a little easier to gauge this out, but how receptive the company seemed to, feedback, and that's more of something that you just kind of have to gauge. But there were definitely some companies that seemed like they actively encouraged feedback and wanted, to know what their employees thought about the company and, within the team, how, what things people thought were working well and what wasn't. So I think that combination of growth opportunities and then, receptiveness to feedback were really big for me.
Hey, Kevin, I would just add one other thing related to that feedback loop. That was one of the things that we have seen in the diversity roadmap in the firms that are excelling is that constant feedback loop and engagement surveys, employee engagement surveys, and so forth, at least on an annual basis. So, for those firms that might be listening that aren't doing that maybe that's kind of an easier step to take to help with that maturing of programs as well.
Great add-on, Daphne. Maybe just following up for a minute before we move to another topic. Both Bob and Elle mentioned career development. You're in the talent acquisition business, and I know that you really need people to be retained, or else you're on a constant do loop of effort that's not going to result in any long-term value for the firm. Have you noticed a difference in your discussions with senior engineering managers that they get that a little bit of hidden productivity, as Elle described it, and developing folks' career creates longevity and retention, and thus, is ultimately cheaper and more productive in the long run? Have you seen a shift in mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's not just about recruiting them. Like you said, you need to retain them. And so you really do need to focus on the development of all employees, but specifically, as Elle confirmed, this generation really wants you to show how you can progress, how you can grow and develop your career. So we spend a lot of, we invest significantly in career and professional development opportunities. Two of our biggest initiatives in our strategic plan are about development. The first is a major career pathing program that we're putting in place that empowers people at all levels. So addressing this generation, but obviously you care about all your employees. So we have that on the docket to do for all of our employees at all levels. And then the second is a leadership enablement evolution plans so that people can continue to advance at every phase of their career. So those are two, when we do our 5-year strategic plan every 5 years, those are two of our top initiatives to help progress this.
Okay, great. Yeah, you sort of got us into the retaining aspect with that, with your comments, Aimee. Thanks for that. So let me ask Bob. Bob, what retention strategies have you seen work, specifically well? And maybe even in a few other industries that maybe we could learn from for younger professionals. How important are factors like you hear about work-life balance, remote work options, or mentorship? Are there any others that are more important than those?
The few things, Kevin. 70% of my business is specific to the AEC space. But when I left AECom in 2010, I had a non-compete, so I couldn't work in the industry for 12 months, which gave me an opportunity to start doing work in other industries, and some industries that I still work with. And one of the things that I've noted is other industries fast track people quicker than this industry. This is a mature industry and often looks to use tenure as a barrier before someone can move ahead. You can't be a project manager unless you have 10 years of experience. Where other firms and other industries, they fast track. If someone has the skills, competencies to be a PM, they'll make that person a PM in, with 3 years of experience. So, the willingness to push people based on the capabilities and not based on some artificial means such as tenure, I think is real important. The other thing is, the first book I wrote was 10 Steps of Engagement. And step 10 was understand the behaviors and traits that define your culture, right? And if I wrote the book again, I might have made that step 1, because often I tell clients, hey, you don't have an engagement issue. You don't have a retention issue. You have a hiring issue. You're hiring the wrong people to be a fit for your culture. And I think too often, especially in the AEC space, we all look alike. I do a lot of strategic planning, and it's remarkable to me how everyone has integrity, honesty, quality, safety as a value, which means we all kind of look alike. And I'll often challenge a leadership team with the question, geez, it's interesting. Honesty, have you ever seen dishonesty as a value? Do you have to say honesty? Because, the more you take the popular choices, the more you are hiding from the things that maybe truly make you unique. And then you can do a better job defining your employer value proposition. Then when you define what is unique, then you have an easier time, I believe, finding those people that fit for those unique characteristics that you have as an employer. And once you do that, I think retention goes up.
Okay, great. Ellie, following up on those two comments from Aimee and Bob, what would make you and your colleagues, your friends, stay with a firm long term? We talked about opportunities for growth. We talked about leadership, opportunities for yourself and your colleagues earlier than like as Bob said, you can become a partner at Goldman Sachs by age 32, and here you're still on probation sometimes, generically speaking. And it's true, or at least historically it's been true. Are there other just value sets or work-life balance? What are the couple things for you and more and higher achiever Gen Z folks like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely goes back to those growth opportunities for sure. But yeah, no, work-life balance too is a really big thing that I've noticed with a lot of my friends. What we're looking for in a job. I think we're valuing a lot more, knowing that we're spending most of our day at work and wanting to make sure that we have that time after work to kind of reset. But also too, building like a workplace environment where, you enjoy the people that you work with, like a very collaborative environment, where everybody is kind of helping each other grow and learn, and, you can get questions answered from, other people on your team, I think is a really big thing in just having that overall job satisfaction that can, make you want to stay at a place long term.
Okay, so the ability to feel supported is important.
Yeah.
There. Aimee, let me ask you specifically nowadays in our industry, most firms are pretty busy. It's like the good times are here, so to speak, for backlogs are at all-time high. The work demands on the engineering staff is huge. So how are you guys managing, and how would you recommend to folks managing the sort of dichotomy between need to hire more engineers and keeping your standards high and making sure, to Bob's earlier point, that you hire the right mix of candidates for your particular culture?
Yeah, the way we would work certainly creates a bit of drama, right? When the go decision happens, we have to hire quickly. So the easy things to do is to, look at your process, streamline, make sure you remove bottlenecks and redundancies. I did that when I got here 3 years ago so that we can make sure that we can get offers out the door pretty quickly. We have a wonderful feeder pool because of our intern program into early career. But the second thing we developed after we looked at our processes was to look at our, develop interview training for hiring teams, because sometimes we saw that the delay happens after the interview when hiring teams are deciding who to move forward with, the assessment, the decision. So we thought by doing, providing more information to hiring teams so that they can make decisions and assess talent quicker, that will speed things along. And then third, and it kind of touched on what Elle said, talent acquisition, our team talks to everybody that we look to bring in. And, while the hiring teams are talking about the technical aspects of the job and the project work, we make sure that we're talking about our company culture, what makes us unique, as Elle said, what it means to be an employee here. Some people want to be active and some people don't, and that's okay because we have something for everybody. So being intentional with articulating what else it means to be an employee here at VHB, in addition to the job spec, is what we're trying to do to give them that, leave them with that understanding of all the other things that they can do here.
Okay. Bob, our business, you mentioned you were in other industries, and the whole consulting world is filled with projects and budgets, but a lot of other companies don't have such things, for overhead functions like engineering. It's more just development of a product that is as an overall budget, but not specifically task by task. How can companies help younger candidates to get into our business? And all of a sudden, as you mentioned, they got utilization targets, they're on a project with a budget, they have certain hours to the project managers holding them accountable. Ellie's head must have exploded when she first got in here. Do you have any advice on how younger people can deal with those stresses and how companies can, help them along the way early on?
Yeah, so Aimee mentioned something about, a client project gets signed and, there's a big go to start hiring. So many companies in this industry, they do such a horrific job in the onboarding side, right? There's so much pressure on utilization and trying to get people, chargeable as early as possible, that I think we do a disservice on training and development during the onboarding process. And that training isn't just for one's career. What is it like to be in consulting? So many people don't understand the pressure on utilization. Well, I think it's because the firm didn't really articulate why we need to bill hours, right? How we make money here, how we win work, the challenge with an overrun, and what does a DSO mean? So really work during the early stages of a professional's career. This is what life is like to be a consultant. And I do think, by the way, that this industry has a pricing issue. People that have been in it for a long time know that to be true, right? Because I work with other professional service firms, and $350 an hour is kind of the standard in a lot of professional service firms outside of this industry. And Kevin, what is it here? Like $170 an hour?
Yeah.
So yeah, so having a world-class culture has a cost to it. So if you want to have corporate universities and training and development and work-life balance and all these incredible things that junior level people are looking for, I think it's real important that we start positioning ourselves as an industry that we provide an amazing value, right? So we want to provide our professionals with a great career. The other thing to keep in mind, if you're hiring math and science young professionals, they are looking at offers from Netflix and Google and Facebook. So it's not just this industry we're competing with. So what can we do to create a great value for the employees to want to join and stay here?
Right. Great. Thanks. Well, I'd like to follow up with you. This discussion, I think, for a lot of our audience is fascinating, because you get into we take it for granted it's projects and we have to go win work. And remember, somebody asked me once, what do you guys talk about all the time in senior management land in engineering? I said, just winning work. It's 98% of it. And keeping the people nowadays. So those are the two topics. How did you perceive, when you were just getting out of school, what this industry was like in terms of projects and budgets and project managers? What did you know about it, and what was a big surprise once you really found out what it's like?
Yeah, I think I don't think that college really prepared me for the whole business aspect of my job. And I don't know if there's really anything they can do to fully, let new engineers know, that it's not just, in college, it's you're plugging numbers into an equation and, you're solving the problems and you're like, this is exactly what my job's going to be like, right? I don't know if there's a way to fully get that message across until you're in it and you're, actually doing the job and having to deal with budgets and stuff like that. But I think it does really help to have a company and, you know, other coworkers to help you through that process. And, you know, yeah, like Bob was saying, you know, maybe we could do a little better job on the onboarding process of explaining the process and orientating, you know, new employees to what it is to be a part of, you know, this industry. But yeah, I think a big thing is just you come in and you're you know, really underprepared for what it is to be in the business. But you know, you just have to have some good support from, you know, your coworkers to kind of figure the whole process out.
Okay, Aimee, let me follow up with you on this topic. Do you have you guys gotten better, I guess, at explaining the business of engineering, quote unquote, to younger new employees of yours, and do you find that it helps their performance and their expectations once they know? I remember old days we used to just throw people in there without even mentioning what your utilization expectation is, and I think we've gotten better. But what's your perception industry wide of how we're doing as a group?
Yeah, this comes up a lot with hiring teams because they do see that it's important to talk about what makes us, you know, unique in the consulting and billability and utilization. So it does come up quite a bit, and I think you know, we're trying to give the hiring teams more tools to be able to talk about it. I think in addition to what Elle shared, the, you know, the mentorship that we have for this generation, that helps to also get them acclimated to that component of our industry for sure. So we're trying to be intentional with how we're, well, you know, getting them up to speed in our industry and that component of it.
Okay. Great. Thank. I know years ago I think as a group we're pretty poor at that. Bob, moving to like a little bit on recruiting and leadership. You know, looking ahead with you know, I was just at a college board meeting the other day, and they're predicting that the um continued drop in college grads is going to significantly increase over the next 10 years, not just slowly increase, significantly. Um, so what do you see the future of recruiting in the engineering sector moving towards? You know, Aimee mentioned they're hiring some high school kids, which that's the first I'm hearing about that. That's interesting. What else do you see happening?
Yeah, well, you know, I think Kevin, the biggest thing is probably the acknowledgement that there's a dramatic supply and demand shift. It's not just, you know, we're graduating fewer math and science, you know, graduates, but we're competing for other industries who are also seeing fewer in math and science folks. So, you know, I think there is recognition from leaders because once upon a time, if you asked any CEO in this industry, you know, what's your biggest challenge? You know, they would tell you finding work, you know, finding clients, delivering high quality project work. Where today, almost every survey that I've seen, and I've spoken at a lot of boutique conferences, and you know, even the most jaded non-people CEO, I mean, they're out there saying their number one threat is people. So, you know, there is a burning platform right now. So, you know, how do we find more? How do we have more internship programs? You know, how are we more willing to look across the aisle, right? So, you know, are there people who aren't technical that can come in and play management and leadership positions, right? You know, I think too often we have a bias that you have to be an engineer. You know, and Kevin, I know with your background, similar to my background, you know, you rose to the, you know, head of an engineering company as a non-engineer, and I was able to lead 3,000 engineers and scientists, and I'm not an engineer or a scientist, right? So I think we have to start being more innovative and not just automatically assume if you're going to be a principal in your firm, you have to come from the engineering or science ranks and look across the aisle and say, well, we've got some wildly talented people that can do a great job, you know, from a managerial leadership standpoint, even though they might not be technical.
Okay. Aimee, this is a topic I'd like to get Ellie's and then Bob's reaction to this as well. You know, a lot of firms are out there doing general leadership skills training. And I see it in many cases, it's not specifically on geared towards projects, although like in Ellie's case, most of her life and world revolves around successful project execution. So what's your evolving thinking about leadership training at different levels of the organization? And do you think sometimes we make it a little too generic and maybe create expectations for Ellie that all of a sudden she's going to become the leader of the firm at age 25 because she went to leadership training? And maybe some of this stuff we're doing is not thought through enough. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that aspect of it, of training?
Yeah, from what we've seen, they want this. They want to be exposed. They want to have access to senior leaders and client meetings, and they want that. So one of our employee resource groups is for this generation. It's called our Emerging Professionals Group. And we have workshops, we have seminars, we have access to conferences that they can go to. They don't have to because our employee resource groups are voluntary, but we're giving them a way to get exposure. They can work on company-wide initiatives. They can schedule a coffee with our CEO to talk about different topics. They have exposure and they get that experience. There's a formal mentorship program. They do networking. So they're meeting people across different practices, getting out of where, if they're in transportation, they can move across and see other professionals and other practice lines. We do a lot of community involvement events, whether it's a walk for this or our VHB Cares program. They do social activities, and we do have a lot of recognition. So we're hoping that we're satisfying this generation by giving them those it's helping with their development, but it's also giving them exposure to leaders and different things outside of their day-to-day work.
Okay, great, thanks. Ellie, you're the person that really has some insights into this aspect. In your first few years on the job, what leadership training have you had, or other kinds of training, and what in your day-to-day activities say, geez, I wish I had a little bit more experience in this or that, or because my favorite thing is somebody should train Ellie how to go ask for more money from a client on a change order. Well, which is not easy, right? So give us your perspective on what do you think? Well, boy, this is what I face day to day. I wish I had a little bit more experience or training on this, that, or the other thing.
I think if there was some training on the whole change order thing, that'd be pretty useful. Yeah, no, I definitely think there's stuff, more of the day-to-day tasks that I have to deal with, of things like how to ask a client for more money, how to communicate if there was a challenge on a project, some of those more I guess social based skills. I think definitely to have some training would be really nice. But really a lot of it has come from, I guess the training on the job has come from mentorship and having other people, who have had more years of experience and who, maybe have had to ask for a change order once or twice, to ask feedback from them and get advice on how to handle it, and, observe those people, how they approach certain aspects of the job. So the training would be really nice for that. But as far as like the general leadership training, I agree with what Aimee was saying of it is, very attractive as, somebody young in their career, even if, I'm not looking to, be president, in the next 5 years. It is nice to have opportunities to be exposed to some of the more general training and, really just the opportunities to talk to people who have progressed their career and get feedback from them on, things that they wish they would have known earlier on, things that really helped them to grow as a professional. I think those leadership opportunities the ones where I've been able to talk to, you know, higher up professionals have been some of the more useful ones, kind of just in a general sense of figuring out where I want to go with my career.
Kevin, I
Awesome.
just wanted to remind everyone, if they have any questions, they can put those in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll try and take those as they come along. So I just wanted to give everyone a friendly reminder.
Okay, and I need to save enough time to ask you the one big question at the end about if you were king, what would you do? But I think we have a few minutes to hold that. One of the things to follow up on that, Aimee, Bob, and Ellie, is, you know, many times firms will, you know, have Ellie work on a proposal but not go to the presentation, you know, that type of thing. And you know, it's again, it's a little bit like job rotation, a little investment in letting folks go to the meeting where you deliver the bad news to the client that the project's going to be 2 weeks late because a third party showed up with a permit request and, you know, asking for more money in a change order because the client changed the scope. And that kind of stuff is really where you learn by just, you know, getting thrown into the game a little bit. Aimee, how do you folks, and how would you recommend other people listening to this encourage that kind of behavior? Because I think it helps with recruiting, retaining, and training Ellie's generation, and it's you know, it's not an expensive proposition than all kinds of training courses and flying everybody around all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, given our size, we can bring our early career into client meetings, and they get exposure to that. So I think it's important to talk about it. That may be very appealing to some, not appealing to some, and that's okay. But I think that's definitely something that we talk about in the interview process, what they're going to get exposure to. You know, a lot of times we work across different practice lines, so they're going to get exposure to that. So I think as long as we're doing a good job kind of talking about the multidisciplinary firm and our approach, the better.
Okay, Bob, following up on that, your firm does a lot of engagement surveys and things like that, but really, I think one of the biggest influences on Gen Z folks is their immediate supervisor. As we often know, that's usually the person who makes or breaks people's perceptions of the firm. How would you encourage our audience to measure the supervisor's capabilities and ability to create, you know, harmony and engagement among the staff?
Well, even before the measurement stage, you know, we have to make sure that the people that are managing people have the right competencies to be effective people managers, right? And I think this industry does a much better job on project management than they do on people management, right? You know, so are you selecting whether promoting or hiring from outside? Are you promoting people with, you know, the competency of empathy or humility? You know, key characteristics of successful managers, right? And that first line supervisor is so key, Kevin, because that individual last week they were a peer, and this week they're now managing people that they were, you know, peers with. And have we really done the necessary training and development for that person so they understand what they should be doing? My son works for a very large company, and a few years back he told me he, you know, kind of woke up one day and he had 9 direct reports. And I asked him, did they change your day job? He said, no, I get the same job. Now I get to manage 9 people. And I think we in this industry do that a lot, right? You know, we put someone in a supervisory role, but we don't change their metrics. So they got the same things they're being measured on. And often it's not the success of the people that they're managing. So, you know, I think it's so key to select the right people, provide the necessary training and development, and then you can measure, you know, is it working? And, you know, the most simple way of doing that is a pulse survey. Do a company-wide pulse survey. You can quickly see where employees seem to be, you know, fully engaged within a department, a group, or P&L center. And then you can benchmark and say, wow, the bottom 5% of our managers are these folks. How do we kind of parachute in and provide some, you know, important training and development or removal if they're the wrong people?
Okay. Thanks, Bob. Ellie, I'm going to ask you one quick question, and then we're going to ask the whole panel for their one piece of advice, the one major thing that they would recommend about attracting and retaining top talent. But my question to you, Elle, is about ownership opportunities in our business. Business is changing a lot with the advent of private equity and different firm ownership models. How important of a topic is that to folks in your generation today?
I think that's something that I wasn't thinking of right out of college. Hadn't really, heard of, what it's like to be at different companies that operate in different ways. But as I've been in the workforce since graduating, that has been a more attractive factor in companies, is having companies where like employee owned, where you might have a little bit more I guess skin in the game, on projects and on the growth and the prosperity of the company affects your life a little bit more. So I think it's something that isn't necessarily fresh new grads are thinking of all the time, but being in the industry, it's definitely come to my attention a lot more.
Okay, at a fairly young age. So once you get your feet wet and understand how the business works, it becomes one of the things you start thinking about long term.
Mm-hmm.
Great insights, Elle. Thank you so much. So let's start with, if the question is, if you give one piece of advice to the audience on, what you should think about, change perhaps about your attracting and retaining top talent in today's environment, what would it be? And Bob, as a KG veteran, we'll start with you. You've had a lot of experience and thought about this topic a lot. What's your, hey, this is the most important thing for you folks in the audience to think about?
You have to manage your business today like your employees are the number one most important thing to your business, even more so than your clients. And that is sacrilegious for a lot of more senior people to hear or understand. The war for talent is over and the talent won. So you truly need to be managing the workforce so that they feel they are the most important asset. And only when you reach that point, then I believe it's a necessary first step before you can offer extraordinary client service. It starts with the employees. And the more they think you care about them as people, not just as billable widgets, but as people, you'll see a change in your retention statistics.
Okay, I love that. Snackable content and the war for talent is over. Talent won. That is great advice, Bob. I think everyone appreciates that. Aimee, let's go hit you next. What is your KG sage advice for folks?
So my advice coming from a recruiting standpoint is, it kind of what Bob said about having the right hiring managers. You really do need to have, the right managers in place. And they have to be able to not only talk technically about the job, but they need to be able to answer questions. And especially if we're talking about this generation, they need to be able to articulate what makes us unique, and something that Elle had mentioned. And they also need to be able to answer the questions from this generation on what they care about, which especially is answering the, DEIB approach. And so, what Daphne shared about knowing about the diversity roadmap, it's really important that companies or hiring teams really know their company's roadmap and where they are and where they're heading, and they can articulate it during the interview process when they're talking to prospects.
Thanks so much. Elle, what's your advice to folks in developing strategies to attract people like you?
Yeah, I would say, a big thing for me would be, be receptive to, feedback from your employees, and, especially for leadership in companies, constantly be looking for feedback of, from your teams, how things are going. I think you can get a lot of really good perspectives, and also too, that can help with employees feeling like they are heard, and like their company and management cares what, how they feel about the company and where they want to go with their career. So just being receptive, I think, is just a really big thing.
Great advice. With that, I don't see any other questions
I
out there.
actually do. There was a question that came in,
Okay.
Kevin.
Go ahead.
And so this is geared toward Elle, and and we're seeing this. The institute has a growing, exploding scholarship program for engineering students. And when we talk to them and about their plans, we're hearing about how many offers they've already had, right? And they're maybe even, early in their college career. So the question that came in from the audience is, Elle, how early before graduation were you being actively recruited, or did you have, serious offers? What did that look like in your path?
Yeah, for me, it was about like a year out from graduation. For sure, the fall before I graduated. I think by December I had accepted my offer to work at Terracon. And I know a number of friends that, that fall before they graduated was about when they were really seriously looking into offers as well.
Great, thanks. And I think, Aimee, you hit on, we're even now in the high schools, right? And bringing them in earlier and earlier. So I have a grandson who's 3. I'll send you his information shortly.
Good.
Great. Well,
Great. Just want to thank the panel. Daphne, I'll turn it back to you. The outstanding insights. And Daphne, back to you.
great. Thank you, Kevin. And yes, thank you, Aimee, Bob, Elle, Kevin. Thanks for leading the discussion. We do have, as we said, this is part 1 of a 3-part series. And here is a QR code where you can register for the other 2 coming up in next month, part 2 on retaining. And then we will move on to part 3 in looking at ownership and how do we get that buy-in and those long-term commitments. So encourage you to sign up for those. As Carrie said, we will record them as well. And then finally, I would like to just thank our donors at the ACEC Research Institute who make all of the work that we do possible. Without them, we would not be able to deliver this type of educational content, the research behind it, the diversity roadmap and economic studies, and so much more. So please reach out to these firms and thank them. If you're not on this list and you'd like to be, please reach out to me. We'd love to have you join our ever-growing donor family. There will be a survey sent to you after this session, and we hope you will give us some feedback because that just helps us make these sessions even better. So again, thank you to our panelists for providing all of their insights and expertise. Kevin, thanks for the discussion, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.